The truth is inside of us, and it's wonderful when we have the courage to tell it.
Let me begin this by asking two questions. What is a man, and what are the qualifications to be considered a man? Since the beginning of creation, there has always been a foundation to everything. Good soil is needed before planting a harvest. Construction work is done the moment a solid excavation process has been completed. The builders cannot do anything without a stable ground to start putting all the concrete, metals, and bricks together. Therefore, every single thing is formed from a base or root. Have you ever heard of the root cause of a thing? The notion is that results are derived from a central decision, whether good or bad, but it all stems from one effect. Religious leader Gordon B. Hinckley said, "You can't build a great building on a weak foundation. You must have a solid foundation if you're going to have a strong superstructure." Motivational speaker Zig Ziglar had the same outlook. He said, "The foundation stones for a balanced success are honesty, character, integrity, faith, love, and loyalty. It is not the beauty of a building you should look at. It's the construction of the foundation that will stand the test of time," by David Allan Coe. If a man was first formed from the dust of the ground, then he's the first model of a human being. He's the standard. He's the foundation. So then, what pillars are composed to qualify a man as a man? Well, let's examine them individually. The first and irrefutable distinction is the biological makeup of the person. The direct indication of a male is detected by the genitalia. Obstetricians assist with labor of birth, which is by far no easy task, yet it's miraculous. We have become insensitive to this act because we expect it to happen. We often neglect the potential of death in this procedure due to the fact that infant mortality is rarely discussed. The truth is that when the licensed doctor is giving instructions to the woman who is displaying great strength and experiencing exhaustion, soon enough a little human comes forth. Before state-of-the-art technology, sonograms, and ultrasounds, women had to wait until the completion of the child delivery to determine the gender. So, the moment the baby has come into the world, the umbilical cord is cut, and the question of male or female is immediately discovered thereafter by a quick observation of the genitals. In the womb, God is forming the embryo to his liking. We have no choice in the matter, but only a wishful thought. A baby born with male reproductive organs cannot be nothing else, nor can he have both. It's one or the other. That's how God fashioned it, and if there's a discrepancy, then it simply comes from a mind that's warped or contaminated. Take this for comparison. For each tree is known by its own fruit. For they do not gather figs from thorns, nor do they gather grapes from a bramble bush. That statement implies nothing but authentic truth. In layman's terms, it means you cannot produce something different from the core existence in which you were created. Is it possible to grow a pumpkin from an apple seed? Can you alter the color of your skin to fit your own preference? The intellectual answer is that nothing that is already formed can be recreated into something different unless it is tampered with or reconstructed after demolition. The short answer to these questions: no. Journalist Lauren Nygaard published an article back in 2018 with the Washington AP News during the uproar of transgender equality and the Human Rights Campaign in Pennsylvania. She proposed several questions to the doctors and pediatricians who were cordial enough to give her answers amongst the protesters. She asked, "Aren't sex and gender interchangeable?" The lead doctor replied within reason and said, "Sex typically refers to anatomy, while gender goes beyond biology." Now, if you are listening to this program and have understood that the sex of a human is in direct proportion to the gender, then you can see how diluted that reply was. In the midst of being scrutinized or ridiculed for not giving an appropriate answer, the doctor added a truthful yet contradictory statement. He followed up and he said, "Gender identity is more an inner sense of being male, female, or somewhere in between, regardless of physical anatomy," he explained. "It may be influenced by genetics and other factors, but it's more about the brain than the sex organs." And there lies the truth. It's more about the brain than the sex organs. That's the problem with all of this. It's a condition of the brain and neurological system. Simply put, it's a situation where patterns have been learned rather than being born with such proclivities. It's a matter of the decision to behave and conduct oneself in a way that is a regression to humanity rather than a progression to our existence. The doctor essentially discredited himself while providing his own beliefs of the matter simultaneously. He felt peer pressured, which is why he answered one way and then gave an additional comment shortly after. A double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways, and don't forget it. The argument is not a good one to proclaim that a male or female is not determined by sex, gender, or orientation. If you do so, you basically have no common sense, or the lack thereof. The greatest example of the natural order of things can be seen in nature. When will a scientist or biologist discover homosexual animals? If they do, are there any transgenders amongst the group? Do animals have the instinctive desire to carouse with the same sex? I think it will be an interesting study for what it's worth, but it'll be also a waste of valuable resources to investigate such futility. The only mammals that have an influx of gender confusion are human beings. A great philosopher once said, "Isn't it obvious that it's disgraceful for a man to have long hair? And isn't long hair a woman's pride and joy? For it has been given to her as a covering." The majority of men have shorter hair than women, which is correlated to the distinction of male or female. There are some men who let their hair grow longer than average, but that's 10% of the population, while 90% of the population of women are grossly with a full head of hair reaching to their shoulders at minimum. But furthermore, the facts are that a male is known and confirmed by the moment he is pushed through the womb and diagnosed, likewise for a female. The second criteria is that a man is designed to provide, protect, and procreate. Now, infertility amongst men is as low as 9%, which states that men are more than likely to impregnate several women at an alarming rate in this hypersexual era we live in. In fact, we are seeing it now with the rise of single-parent households. The dismissal or not practicing any of the three things will automatically render that man worthless. He's without ambition and has disqualified himself from receiving intangible achievements like having intellectual growth, wisdom, development of character, and emotional intelligence. American poet and writer Archibald MacLeish once said, "The only thing about a man that is a man is his mind. Everything else you can find in a pig or a horse." I agree with him. It's the only difference between man and every other living organism, including plants. What is the mission of a man? How many men have made a goal to strive towards? The dream that you want to achieve should encompass or be integrated with your mission. If you want to be known as a great attorney, then your actions and mannerisms will develop in that fashion. If you want to be recognized as a dentist or doctor, then you will exhibit intelligence that is conducive to that profession. The very moment you sit down or construct the thought and decide what you want to accomplish will become your mission, your goal. In today's society, economic growth potential is easier to obtain with the use of advertising, networking, and digital marketing through social media. This doesn't lessen the effects of a college degree because those are still a necessity for high-efficiency occupations like a surgeon, lawyer, or a prosthodontist. For the most part, reaching the 1% category of the wealthy of the world isn't as hard as you may think, since many men aren't even trying at all. Do this. Take 5 minutes to think about your dream. Then write it down on a notepad or on something immediately, even your palm if that's all you have at the moment, so you don't forget it. Later, you can write it inside a notebook or journal. If you will consider doing this right now, today, or sometime in the near future, you would have placed yourself in the 10% group of those who have financial freedom. The reason for this is because the majority do not think, and at a minimum, many wouldn't care to make a note of any bright idea, let alone their personal goal. Most people are lazy, and that's the truth. Men kill their own dreams by not even pursuing them. A thought is just that, without any progressive action. A desire is nothing but an urge that awaits for a start of momentum. Remember, faith without works is dead. You can apply that to anything in life. Nothing just happens without input to see the output. The difference between a goal-oriented man and a goal-achieving man is that the oriented man is impelled to relentlessly accomplish something significant, while the achiever usually only sees to benefit oneself from the objective in the hopes to self-validate. There's nothing wrong with either of the two personas, but only one makes a sustainable impact on civilization or a team. Bill Gates, J.P. Morgan, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, were men that had ideas which were influential. They made a difference in how we do commerce and our use of the convenience of technological advances. Their mission or dream had an incredible impact on how we view the world today, and in the process of realizing their dream come true, they amassed a lot of money. They deserve it. They were well accommodated for their relentless pursuit. The paradigm of it all is that these types of men were never in it for the money. They saw a problem and found a solution. We are just the privileged recipients. We're reaping the benefits. I am thankful for such inventive minds because I certainly wouldn't have thought of half the stuff that we frequently use as a convenience to improve our way of living. The wonderful thing about reaping and sowing is that it can work in your favor or against you. It depends on how you use it, really. But nothing is ever more certain than this statement from the Almighty. He said, "For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he." The way you believe you are is what you are, and the way you think you deserve to be treated is how you eventually treat yourself. You know it takes a strong conscious effort to improve oneself and be held accountable for the decisions made. The obstacles are looking forward to meeting you to challenge your faith and resilience. Men shouldn't shy away from these events because this is where our fortitude is developed from. Listen to this wisdom. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, "I'm strong." Let the weak say, "I'm strong." That's powerful. It's the key to anyone's success. Though you may appear a certain way, you can be making productive strides to become something that you are not yet. If you don't give up, lose hope, or get discouraged, you'll get closer to your dream than letting that dream get away from you. The divine law stated, "We will reap a harvest if we do not give up." You can look poor, but be rich. You can look rich and have nothing. Children have the greatest imagination with pure intentions. They often proclaim that they want to be an actor, professional athlete, singer, video gamer, firefighter, or whatever they can imagine. No one tells the child that they are insane. We let them roam in the midst of their thoughts. Who knows? They may eventually become that. The man that made famous the 3 words, "I'll be back," had some other words that were more profound. The former governor and pristine actor Arnold Schwarzenegger said, "I welcome and seek your ideas, but do not bring me small ideas. Bring me big ideas to match our future." Likewise, a man should have a vision of what he wants to accomplish in his life, an imagination. He should have aspirations, both minor and major, just like a child has when they are in their stage of fantasy. Without a vision, there's no purpose. Without a purpose, you simply are lost and headed to the address to nowhere. Having a plan for the future is what men are designed to do. You don't hear about a cruise ship sailing without a destination, do you? Counterfeit men are as superfluous than women. Granted that there are more men on earth than women, but nevertheless, it doesn't negate that the majority of men share the same mindset. That is, focus on retaining money by legal or illegal means, use women for sex as a retaliation for their dispositions, when the proper way to handle it would be to start exercising self-control and sexual discipline, rather than lashing out like a neglected child. A captain of a platoon doesn't need to voice his leadership skills. He displays it through his actions, and the lieutenants follow his lead with confidence. There might be some slight doubt, but consistency trumps doubt, just as hard work beats talent. If men would clean up their act and have dignity in their day-to-day endeavors, then women would have no choice but to clean up theirs too. With all of that being said, it may be too late, if not irreparable, due to the inflated perception of women's independence. It's a silly expression to let a comment come out of your mouth which erodes the function of things. A woman claiming that men are not needed or doesn't require their presence is like stating children don't need parental guidance from both father and mother. A man is head over the woman. A woman presides over the children, in that order. Who has authority over the men then? Well, that's God himself. These destructive male-dominated groups that are collectively opposing women or ridiculing them for their behaviors is not healthy. It's not a benefit to anyone when you are defaming and persecuting someone based on your dislikes. You can't expect to like everything about someone or something. That's not reality. You can grow to appreciate those things as you become more familiar, but the differences are what attracts us in the first place. If we want to become more congruent, then constructive criticism is the best method to approach. How about being a leader and setting standards so that women can either accept them or be left to their own devices, which isn't good by any means, since the statistics prove that women are horrific in single-handed decision-making skills. They'll destroy themselves or expose themselves to the likelihood of aggravated sexual assaults. Studies have confirmed that men and women become depressed when they are not a part of a community or receiving some form of social stimulation. The severity of it is quite cautionary because 40% of people who are more lonely tend to die within a 4-year span, and 75% of the socially isolated commit suicide. Results that can come from an unsafe environment can yield nothing but poor or underdevelopment. You truly are a product of your environment. Change the environment, you can change what you conform to. A group of criminals locked up in a prison have nothing but criminal thoughts usually. That's why they are there. They typically have to be on continuous alerts and be given commands when to eat, shower, and sleep. It's rudimentary. This isn't an environment for the faint of heart because you must be on guard for your safety against any type of assaults, whether it be sexual or gang-related. It's paranoia. But being admitted into a facility as such will change the way you function. You will be stripped away of your freedom and therefore be indulged in the conformity of the environment. Put a plant into a glass jar of your choice and take care of it the same way you would if it was planted outside in good soil. The roots will grow, a stem will sprout from the soil. A day comes and goes. Then a week flies by. But after a while, the plant cannot grow any longer because it's been entangled by its own roots within the jar. The jar prevented the plant from becoming larger and more vibrant. By having no space to spread its roots, the plant decayed. This slow decay is what has happened to the men also. They have placed themselves into prison psychologically and emotionally. There's a reason why the minorities in the world, those who are in the lower class or borderline poverty, are the majority. They are majority debt holders, majority in repossessions and foreclosures, majority in excuses to be lazy while making a fighting stand to remain on welfare or government aid. They are the majority shareholders in feeble-minded behavior with an extra dose of stupidity. Look at how popular street clothes and fast fashion has become the norm for most men of all ages. You rarely see casual wear or a level of maturity with the clothing that is being worn on bodies today. I mean, there's no problem with wearing a t-shirt during a warmer climate or within your home, nor is there an issue with wearing jogging pants for lounging around the confines of where you reside or use with intense workouts. The social standards and etiquettes have dropped so low, like a bankrupt company that was the world's best for 50 years, and we had to start following a new culture shift created by the younger generations who know nothing about nothing. It's because the wealthy have made gain of the infantile minds and behaviors of these groups. They are profiting nicely. If these low-class groups will wake up, they'll have a great chance to amass their own level of wealth. But let's face it, they're not. Because it's easier to drift with the flow of the stream than to meet resistance as you tussle to obtain a better living. Following the crowd is easy and comfortable, but going a different way of discomfort with new and prosperous options, many will decline. I am not a man that loves money, nor live my life to acquire a certain status, but this is why the rich remain rich and the poor will remain poor. It's just that simple. When God told us to be fruitful and multiply, that also insinuated how we thrive together. We are better together rather than being divisive or trying to one-up the next. We tend to want peer acceptance, whether indirectly or directly, since we are crowd followers and have tendencies to mingle in group settings. This is why we select certain organizations to be a part of. Just look at how you select careers or jobs. We want to feel appreciated and worthy, utilize our skills and talents to grow as one unit, be considered as productive or a contributor. But men have lost their integrity and dignity in this generation. All men want to do is solicit merchandise of prestigious brands, flaunt the quality of life that they're either living or faking by boasting about their luxury cars and homes, the excessive need to brag about their level of promiscuity amongst other men, as if it's a proud accolade like a college degree or certification. This is an example of low self-esteem, a subconscious dilemma. Instead of behaving like men are exhibiting feminine traits on the regular. Don't you know that masculine cancels out feminine? Everyone is familiar with the metaphorical genders called Father Time and Mother Nature. Mother Nature throws many tumultuous events in weather patterns, tsunamis, earthquakes, or just about any climatical weather condition that are a threat to one's life. But Father Time always seems to smooth things over enough so that the damages are not extended for a long period of time. Can you imagine experiencing a flash flood every single day, non-stop? It'll be dreadful. But since we have the grace and mercy of time, that duration of potential carnage is eliminated. There's truth in that analogy. A man who is balanced naturally knows how to bring calmness to a woman. If he's secure, she feels more protected. If he's a relatively good decision maker, then she's less likely to cause strife. Men are problem solvers, and we innately want to fix something that is broken or needs maintenance. There isn't value in being an uncontrollable sex addict. On the contrary, a stoic man that respects his body and has self-control is what women fantasize to have the most. That's the problem. Men are without discipline, which makes the population of women act the same. Men are the foundation. That foundation has become brittle and weak, though. Why should anyone follow a weak man? It's detrimental. That man can not be of true service because he's not operating in his masculine. Napoleon Bonaparte was a small man. He stood approximately at 5 foot 6 inches. Now at a glance, he seems insignificant. But this man was a leader of an army of troops. He was a French emperor, and he became one of history's greatest military commanders. He led the French Revolution. Today, his tactics are still being studied by all military forces worldwide. Would you have followed this man? Would you have adhered to his leadership? You know you are a strong and dependable man when a dozen other men blindly follow your lead because of their faith in you. They trust you. Jesus said, "On this rock I will build my church." The irony about this statement he uttered is that he was actually talking to the leader of the 12 disciples named Simon Bar-Jonah, the man who had a wife and was head of his own household. He had no children, but he knew how to govern and take initiative. He also knew how to be decisive, provide, and be aggressive when times called for it. However, his name was changed. Can you guess it? It was changed to Cephas, which translates to Peter, and the meaning of that name stands for rock. That's how we men are supposed to be perceived metaphorically, like a rock. It's symbolic for being sturdy, immovable, and robust. It's what keeps things stable. It's a symbolism of a reliable and trustworthy foundation, whether it's a person, place, or thing. The batch of men in this era seem to be built from a mass of clay in the way that they mimic one another. They're swift to react emotionally in the event of a discourse or disagreement instead of using logical reasoning when under duress. High-stress occupations that require enormous amounts of self-restraint and altruism, like an oil rig worker, are male-dominated. That's because men are willing to take on these types of professions by choice. It's not because they're seeking dangerous jobs to make a living, but they gravitate to them because of the salary, which I don't fault them for. Who else is going to do the job when a widespread amount of other high-stress employment is needed elsewhere? I consider myself a man of faith, but I certainly wouldn't waste my time believing in a God if I realized how degradable and fallible that being was. This is why people have beliefs. They rely on its validity to provide direction to a pleasing yet fulfilling life. The rituals and teachings have become integrated with the way they interact with everything, the way they see the world. In order to function in life, you have to have some sort of method to follow. Even atheists have a belief, regardless of their resilience to denounce the existence of an omnipotent being. They operate on what they believe is true, and so do we all. That's why we have free will and the Declaration of Independence to grant us freedom alongside our civil rights. No matter what belief or social status we may have that separates us, there is one mantra we all follow. I like the way the College Hall of Fame football coach Lou Holtz said it, who also had a stint with the NFL's New York Jets. He said, "I follow 3 rules. Do the right thing, do the best you can, and always show people you care." Isn't that the same thing as love your neighbor as yourself? It's not verbatim, but it's the same message. Treat people how they should be treated, and nothing less. If you want to express more than that, then do it from a kind heart with no strings attached. You'll be surprised how more rewarding it is to be that way than to always expect something in return. Speaking of treatment, the low attendance of men being emotionally available in their households continues to disrupt the children's psychology, which will affect their adulthood. In the United States, 1 in 4 children are fatherless. That's 25%, which is close to 19 million children without their biological father or a father figure. The United Kingdom is the most comparable with 21%. Every other country is in the single digits or has no records reported because the fathers are present. It becomes a full-on search to really pick and choose a prototype man to look up to. Where are the real men? What can the boys and male teenagers model? Well, they grow up looking at faulty blueprints of men by their immediate surroundings. Most times this is a relative, but if there are none readily present, then it becomes friends and neighbors. Let me tell you a brief story. There was a young boy living in a low-income apartment with his mother, and he didn't know who his father was. The father never made an effort to get to know him. The young boy isolated himself in school, but was an average student. He did what every other boy his age did. He certainly received his share of suspensions. Then one day, walking home, he noticed his neighbor, who lived 3 blocks away in a subdivision, playing with his 2 sons on the lawn. It was a nice house with a driveway leading to the garage. The boy stopped and stared from a distance. No one saw this as a threat because he often mingled with the kids in that community. He saw much eagerness of joy between the father and his teenage sons. Naturally, the boy began to feel a little bit of doubt that he would never experience that type of satisfaction. But somewhere inside of him, he also knew that one day when he becomes a father, he will be joyous and energetic with his children too. Observation can be everything. It can be the only thing you need to alter your perspective or make you realize something that you didn't before. You can have a self-inflicting perception. Think about it. If the boy saw a domestic dispute amongst the father and his sons, that could have triggered something within the young man to have a violent attitude towards handling conflict and disagreements. The worst that could happen is the boy begins to harbor hatred in his heart and starts being abusive or becoming a predator. You see how important it is to have a proper male role model? The effects are the same for young girls, but to a different degree. Train up a child in a way that they should go, and they will not depart from it. But the regrettable thing about it all is that children have no parents and are navigating through their youth with the ignorance of their peers. They are being trained by the naive, which will make it difficult for them to leave that state of being unless they make drastic changes. Without a template to look at, our guide to what a man is makes you create your own theory. The men we see today have been unfortunate to have such an example. Not every child is privileged to join a camp or sports team to learn fundamental values of camaraderie and social skills. These things are mandatory as humans. We need to be able to articulate ourselves in everyday life for assistance when we are unable to be a one-man team, for business meetings, dealing with customer service for bills, or any discrepancies. Having the reinforcements of masculinity brings forth a framework of order. That trait to analyze before deciding is a major element to a man. We all have it, but we all do not use it. Those who embrace it have had great results, but those who let their emotions lead them have always been in some sort of drama-filled arrangement. The military did a total census of all the branches to discover who to deploy and who can take on other supportive roles. They tallied up that 84% were men and 16% were women. Upon designating jobs, the able-bodied men were geared up to take on missions that could result in fatal death. The men understood the assignment and were not second-guessing their decision to defend or regulate. They put their life on the line for the country and the citizens that live in it. We are completely grateful for them and their bravery. How about the women? What jobs were they allocated? The surprising thing about the women in this example is that they were given lesser roles that will reduce their exposure to death. They're serving as mechanics, administrators, or dealing with supplies and electrical engineering. A smaller portion are qualified to operate helicopters and fighter jets. Women are not stronger than men. Men are designed to be superior in their regard for protection. During the Stone Age, men kept flesh-eating animals at bay from their families, as well as going out to dangerous landmass to kill for food and to make garments for covering their bodies. If the military has acknowledged that men are more superior and better suited for the stressfully intense expeditions, then this also applies to common civilians. This is the natural order of things. The reason why it's so overlooked and rejected is because women have decided to not realize that men are the ones that give them the protection to have an occupation, travel, go places that they enjoy with other female friends or colleagues. And men are needed. It's the low standard and without integrity type of men that are not. A man was formed from God's likeness to share in the power, control, and rulership. A man was designed to have dominion over everything on earth. The trees, the plants, insects, and animals are all at his will. He had a job to till the fields and take care of the area that was around him. He was tasked with giving all the names of the animals, which was time-consuming, to say the least. But he was a man focused on his purpose. The concern is that men don't have a purpose in this generation. They can care less to even try to find one. A man must have an admirable goal that when he wakes up each morning, Lord willing, to go after it. He'll face setbacks and challenges, but that's what he needs in order to learn lessons and gain wisdom. The experiences will be a great teacher for him as he continues pressing forward. When we hear the names like Tom Cruise, Morgan Freeman, Michael Jordan, or Warren Buffett, we consider these men as good criteria to follow after. They have created success for themselves, but why do we look up to celebrities the most? What about the veteran lieutenant for the Big Sky Fire Department in Montana, or the CFO who has always been valuable to his company for over 25 years? In retail sales, they discovered a term for how much people thought a product was worth based on how often an item was purchased or marketed. If a vehicle was promoted the most, then the average consumer would have a greater interest in purchasing it, even though there are more efficient ones on the lot. Whenever you witness an influx of purchases for a particular item, then you better believe that the marketing team did a good job of making that product seem better than the others. It isn't necessarily the best option to purchase, it's just that it's what predominantly sells. Just because you see a $2,000 Gucci shirt being worn by your favorite rap artist doesn't make that item more valuable than a 5-pack of Hanes white t-shirts for $25. This is called perceived value, and as an experiment, the truth was shown that the psychology of humans tends to place value on things or individuals that are perceived as worthy and quality products by others. We flock together when a large quantity is in agreement. Birds of a feather truly do and indeed flock together, sometimes ignorantly. You will never see a hawk or eagle fly in a group because they are independent to soar in the sky alone. To a certain degree, that's how a man is supposed to be, for a while. Pursuing a goal alone and with intent. Howbeit, this same perception is placed on the type of men that society exalts or praises. What we need is a reality check. The matters of men that we need are disciplinary and ethics-based. This is all we need for both sexes. The society doesn't want it, though, because it's comfortable with how things are. Terrible. Some things get worse before they get better. A toddler stumbles every single day and falls suddenly at each attempt to walk after the crawling phase. Eventually, the small person develops balance to place one foot in front of the other. Then there are circumstances that will only remain on the trajectory of destruction. It'll never get better for anyone who doesn't practice persistence. A tree doesn't stop growing abruptly. It grows as tall as a building or home in a consistent and organic fashion. It takes months or years for a tree to fully reach its peak. This may sound funny, but I think we're the dumb ones because we often like to cut our own branches and rot. We stunt our own growth and never reach our peak in life. The tree cannot be anything different but a tree, but a human can change. Motivational speaker Jim Rohn said, "If you don't like how things are, change it. You're not a tree." A man can change if he wants. He doesn't have to follow anyone else. he has the God-given nature to create his own legacy. Before a man can get a woman, he needs to have control and victor over himself. Otherwise, he'll be leading both himself and the woman to a direct plummet. A man's primary focus is to get a career or job. Whatever it is, should be credible. Doesn't need to be a chef or theatrical producer, but something that can be respectable. He must have ambition on a job and do it as if he's working for God. He will be rewarded handsomely, even if his compensation is currently not much. If a man's ego isn't compromised or his self-esteem isn't low, he'll work a low-paying occupation consistently with the intent to invest in his dream or business ventures. He knows that it's only temporary. He's playing the long game with patience instead of the quick gratifications. A worthy goal is a gradually patient adventure. It's not a jackpot. Playing poker isn't one of the choices when students graduate with their bachelor's degree. This is a high-risk maneuver, and this is why it's supposed to be just a game and not a profession. After the man has fulfilled his reasoning for waking up, then he can now focus on his professional relationships. His networking and social skills must improve. He needs to have a way to communicate effectively. If he doesn't, he will not be taken seriously, nor have a connection with anyone. Ultimately, he'll lose more often than he wins, because communication is the key. This is how organizations have succeeded, as well as in sports. Let me be frank. Real men are not sitting down playing video games all day to earn a living. They are out in the world providing services to the public. You see, the word professional is used so loosely, in my opinion, these days, because it's attached to titles that don't make sense. Professional landscaper is more valuable than a professional sleeper. Did you know that that was a thing? Their primary task is to sleep on beds to certify the comfort for the general public. Now, a job is a job, but not all are worthy. If it doesn't require any skill or any educational credentials, then what you have is a thing that people evaluated to be of utility. That's the perceived value I talked about earlier. Following the crowd. Here's some strong words your father should have told you. Men need to stop having sex with just about any woman who offers it or sells it. It does nothing for you to do this, but makes you look disgusting. What about the diseases that are out here and which you can contract? Does this cross your mind at all? Sexual intercourse is supposed to be sacred, but we have a lot of lustful enticements, and men are falling into them just as much as women. Each year, the CDC documents the rate of sexual transmitted infections and diseases. They have age groups from 14 through 70 years old. The group that has most of the infections are 23 through 35-year-olds, and women have outpaced men in percentages. Men need to be more selective and not desperate. They are choosing to not resolve disagreements in their romantic relationships, marriages, and going out committing infidelity with mere strangers. The only reason why these sex workers are still around is because men have provided a market for them. If all the weak men start shifting into strong ones, then women will have to rethink their position. It's called get a real job, since they want equality. The Bible said, "Don't waste your life chasing after women. This has ruined many kings." Having a woman is more than just sexual pleasures. It's about intimacy, unison, and cooperation. If an honorable man doesn't get this from the woman he's intending to marry by going on a few dates to see how she behaves in person for compatibility, then she's nothing more than a human blow-up doll. A well-rounded and sophisticated man doesn't treat a woman like a prostitute, even though she dresses like one. He has respect for himself, and he understands distinctions. He's intelligent and aware of people's behaviors and tendencies. Everywhere you go, you see derelict men. It's like a breed of hyenas running around laughing to their own demise and taking every seducing act to their graves. The main reason why a man needs to have sexual discipline is because it reduces bastard children. Doesn't help that we have facilities for sperm donors, which is bizarre to me. If men decide to not fall victim to the seduction of any woman, then he'll hold the standard, and she has no other choice but to bend to his rule. That's how it should go. A woman needs a man to put her in her place. She can't count on other females to do it. It takes a masculine frame to make the impact. Impregnating a woman is not by any means a tedious arrangement. Two heterosexuals consent with an aroused chemistry, and then conception is on the way. This is a beautiful thing, but when it's done in an irregular manner, we get dysfunctional communities and neighborhoods. I blame the men for it all because a woman will only do as much as she knows she can get away with. Men need to really keep it in their pants and stop being antisocial because you want to have sexual relations. These male-dominated social media platforms are not teaching men solutions to becoming a better version of themselves so that they can be an example to other generations that follow them. Instead of telling men to not get married or go your own way, is insinuating you should engage in a series of sexual misconduct. Men desire to spread their seed, sure enough, but in good soil, not in quicksand. I am not talking about domestic violence or battery, not even aggression or intimidation. Men are superior to women, as God made it out to be. It's always worked well in that regard for centuries up until recently, when women have become more masculine to compete or dismantle men. It's because we've let them. And since men are so emasculated now, they are afraid to tell a woman when she is wrong, foolish, or delusional. Well, I guess because most men are delusional too. What I'm stating is that men have lost their firm grip on standards and morals. When the city's walls are broken, then everyone becomes exposed to being endangered or killed. That wall are the men, and the endangered are the women at large, and they don't even realize it. William H. Macy, who's currently still acting in major TV shows and starring in movies, said this: "We thought sex was free. Sex is not free. There's a price to be paid emotionally, physically, even legally. Sex isn't a casual thing. It's a huge thing." Additionally, God told us before wisdom was discovered in a human, He gave us instructions with this statement: "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." Everything I've talked about so far are the issues we are not careful with who, what, and where we share our feelings. We are so expressive that we forget that not everyone cares unless it affects them to some degree. There are some who are compassionate, but this is the minority. The majority are selfish and narcissistic. Whenever you are solving a problem, your focus should be on the major thing and not the minor. If 80% of men are scumbags, then they are the focus. These are the men I am referring to in this program. Why would I talk to the 10% of men who are on course for greater and more productive things in life? They don't need to restructure because they have done the inner work, the self-development. They are not pretending to be something that they are not, and they tend to attract like-minded individuals who join their inner circle, including women of worth. The carpenter of Galilee said, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick." So let's review. 1. A man is known by his genitals first, then everything else that follows. His stature and voice is more than enough of a distinction. There is no altering or hormonal pills that will change this, despite what society propagates. 2. The basic duties of a man is to provide for himself or family, protect those whom he loves, and those who may be of frail size. Then he must be a good negotiator to what soil he plants his seed into, that is, being wise to what woman he marries for procreation. 3. Having honor brings forth dignity, and having dignity brings forth self-respect. If men set standards for themselves, then the women have to adjust. Men are the consumers and women are the merchandise. If the merchandise is not good quality, then the consumer will go look elsewhere for a better product or something more suitable. It's called mindful shopping. This is a fundamental analogy, but it's the truth. Men pursue women and ask them to be wives. You tell me, which gender is usually the one proposing? 4. If you want to engage in sexual activities, you have the freedom to do whatever you like, but be cautious to whom you are sharing your precious body with. Not everyone has a good bill of health these days. It's better to get to know someone as friends in the process of understanding who they are in the hopes to create a legacy through marriage. Having one-night stands or casual sex is not it. 5. Be a man. Have confidence in yourself and don't chase women to appease them or do it for superficial attention from other so-called men. You see, the men who tend to promote such behavior are typically immature, lustful, and who cannot retain a healthy marriage. If you take their advice, you will end up miserable or depressed, more than likely. Find a mentor with character and charisma. Then follow his mannerisms. Apply them to yourself and form your own matter of man. 6. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and needy. That's the book of Proverbs, chapter 31, verse 9. And 7. Remember, establishing yourself is the priority before pursuing a woman of your choice. A woman cannot relinquish herself to a worthless man. You must have a worthy goal to strive towards with the zeal of an energetic child, because one idea of imagination can solve a problem and benefit many. It can also make you rich. Thank you.
The truth is inside of us, and it's wonderful when we have the courage to tell it.